My daughter said, my mama keeps telling me that they're going to get him out of jail. But I don't want him to. Because what if he comes to kill me and my mommy? And it broke my heart. My baby is that her own father would take her life. And I didn't know how to make her feel safe. They can't forgive him. And how can I blame him?
I worked over 100-some homicides. My wife, she'll tell you, I'd drink in a case for any human being to be put in a trash can is about as low as you can do. Put a human being in a trash can. I don't care how good, how bad, how sorry they are. That is low as you can go. And there's still a question in my mind, how could a living human being do this to another human being? Due to the way he cut her throat. Things like that should not happen to anybody under any circumstances. I feel in my heart I've forgiven him, but the forgiveness doesn't free him, it frees me. And I didn't want to be in bondage to that man. I'll never forget. It just was the better option. It wasn't the easier option, but it was the better option. To stay with us in North Carolina when she was 15 years old. There were arguments with her mom. They didn't get along with each other well. As most teenagers do, she entered into a bit of a rebellious stage. Just mischievous stuff, going out at night, sneaking out. Typical teen stuff. I knew that April had a my wife and I had discussed some boundaries for her. She would be going to church, that she wouldn't be dating anybody unless we talked to them. We knew when April arrived, she was not equipped to lead her own life in a positive way. And so when she came to us, we tried to give her a fresh start. I first heard the name Jerry when she had asked me if we could meet a boy she was interested in dating. Jerry had come over to cook us dinner one night. I had asked him about his work, how he had got into cooking, what his future plans were. It was obvious that he cared for her, but there was an arrogance and pride in the way Jerry carried himself. It wasn't long after they started dating that I started having some red flags go up. I really don't remember April coming to us until they had moved in together. Sometimes she would talk about the arguing and the fighting. The fighting even got physical at one time, and they were supposed to go to anger management classes. We knew that there was trouble in paradise. The longer she was in relationship with him, the more fearful my wife and I became. April had decided, and with Jerry's consent, I guess, that they were going to get married, that they were going to keep this baby, that they were going to make a go of it. We got a call from her mother one day saying that she hadn't heard anything from her daughter for I think it was either a week or 2 weeks. And that was odd, her sharing the stuff about the development of the baby, the fact that the baby was a girl. And she asked us to please go to visit their apartment and find out what was going on.
I was 7 months pregnant with Caleb when we got married. I was 19 and the leave was over was the first time we separated. During my second pregnancy, I found a letter and it was so soaked in perfume that the paper was oily, like almost transparent. And it was a letter to Jerry saying that I know you feel obligated to stay right now because she's pregnant again. And it just went on, and it was clear that this was a relationship that was existing outside of our marriage. He was on the phone, hung up real quick. I gotta go, click. And he said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I lived here till today." The next thing I knew, he was throwing stuff at me. My grape, and he broke every one of them. And when that was done, he started throwing knives at me. I just was terrified. I never saw a violent side to Jerry Stewart until the day in that kitchen. You know, a lot of people started kind of shutting Jerry out because of not wanting to deal with April. The stories that he would tell of that relationship, even what few details he shared with me, they were always violent, tumultuous. You know, she couldn't come to his mom's house. That was not allowed. Pretty involved with his family even after the separation. It was important to me that Caleb and Chrissy knew both sides of their family. I still regularly took the kids to see their grandparents. I saw him one day at his sister's house with the kids, and he was telling me he stabbed him in the neck with a pair of scissors. And I looked at him and I said, "Jerry, you have got to get out of this relationship. It's obviously not good. And the way things are going, if you don't get out of this relationship, you're going to wind up dead or in jail."
A trash can had washed up off of Stone Street Extension in Hall River, North Carolina, on some farmland. When I hear the call on the radio, I could tell by the officer's voice that this was not good. I immediately proceeded over there, and the particular officer, this has got to be bad, you know, just listening to his voice. The back creek had just receded because it had been raining, and the barrel was still pretty much closed, except that it broke loose with tape that was taping the barrel shut, and it had come loose a little bit, and we were told that it was a human body. The body had deteriorated, and that means that that person had to have been killed some time ago. In Alamance County, it's a lot like Mayberry. You know, just everybody just about knows everybody. It's a slow pace of living. Very seldom do we have something like this happen there. I seen that the individual's body had deteriorated some. I knew that it wasn't one that recently that hadn't been reported or a kidnapping occurred. I knew it had to be somebody that's been missing for a month or two. But at that time, I did not know this.
One of my son's only memories of April Renee was when she saw us at a restaurant, and she came over to say hi, and Jesse was just a little tyke, and she picked Jesse up in her arms and started loving on him, and that's what Jesse said. He says, the only thing I remember about April Renee is how much she loved me. Memory. We received a call from April's mom that she hadn't heard from her in several weeks. You know, my natural thought was, well, she's taken the car and gone somewhere. Maybe she's run off with us. When we got there and her car was there, that really bothered me. Jerry wasn't home, and when we looked in the back seat of the car, the baby bag that mothers who are advanced in their pregnancy carry with them, and then I opened the trunk. The coat that we had given her was in the back of the car, and that was like her favorite winter coat. After the lady, I said, we need to look in that storage space. I opened the storage room door, and in the storage room was April's belongings. Right as soon as I opened the door was her purse. I opened up her purse and looked in her wallet, driver's license. Her military ID card, her insurance cards, everything was intact, just the driver's license gone. Something was just not right. So I knew at that time we had to go to the police.
She and I had gotten in an argument, and it got physical, and the police showed up. I figured she'd go away, come back in a couple of days, and she didn't. The police started looking for her.
My first introduction to April, I stopped at their apartment. April came to the door, and I said, Chrissy looks at April, and she says, I want my daddy. And April looks at my child and says, he's not your daddy anymore. He's gonna marry me, and you'll never see him again. I didn't care for April at all after she told Chrissy that her father wasn't her father. I think to myself, well, I don't know what he was telling her, you know? Like, I wasn't there for those conversations. I don't hate April. I never really did. I hated the picture that Jerry painted of April. I didn't really know April as a person. I pulled into the driveway from work, and my son comes running outside, and he says, Mommy, 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 my daddy was on the Fox 8-5, and I said, oh, did Daddy open another restaurant? And he said, no, Mommy, not this time. His girlfriend's missing.
Police are searching for a missing 20-year-old woman, April Renee Greer of Alamance County.
Nobody's seen her since Valentine's Day. Nobody's heard anything from her. 25 minutes later, I'm pulling into the driveway, and I stopped halfway into the driveway because April's car was pulled over in the driveway. And I thought to myself, well, why is her car here? Who takes off for good and doesn't take their car? So, the hairs on the back of my neck kind of stood up. When I walked in the door, I said, okay, so what's going on? And all he would say was, she left me. That answer didn't satisfy me. Explain to me why her car's sitting in the driveway. As I was leaving that night, he said, Em, promise me that no matter what happens, no matter what you hear, my kids will always know how much I love them. Don't ever let them down. I knew there was something he wasn't telling me, and I just felt sick to my stomach.
When we find a body that we cannot identify, we go in to pull every possible missing person report within the state. And then from there, try to do investigation to narrow it down to one or two individuals that it possibly could be. It took, in my opinion, and what I gathered, it took an end for something that had a lot of hate and possibly previous problems with an individual. To just kill an individual, that happens every day around the country. But when you kill an individual and then you take and cut their legs off at the hip and stuff, I'm not sure all this brutality wasn't just to be able to get her in that trash can, if you understand what I'm saying. I think feelings at the time this homicide occurred. April Greer was reported missing to the Burlington Police Department. I think we found out she was last seen on February. Burlington Police had searched his apartment when she was missing initially. Jerry told Burlington she had left him, that they weren't together anymore. He don't know where she went. At that point in time, I don't think they had anything to suspect that she didn't leave. When you have a missing person from February to April, right? Matter of fact, if a person is reported missing, I get very concerned after a week if we've not been able to find something regarding that person. Talking with Jerry Lynn Stewart stayed with what the statement he gave the FBI initially. And I'll be honest with you, I could tell he was lying.
Nobody wants to think that their pregnant niece was murdered. We were hopeful. We were praying a lot. We were saying, Lord, where is she? What's going on? What's going on? For him to respond when you cry out with everything that's in you. And after I'd been praying that for a while with my wife, it started raining real hard. And it rained in her body. The trash can had been sealed with duct tape, and they had buried it in a shallow sandbar. And when the rain came and that dirt became soft, it bubbled up out of the ground and washed up on a farmer's field. And the farmer saw buzzards circling, and that's how they found her. They identified April's body by the steel plates she had put in her ankle after she broke her ankle, and also the class ring that she was wearing. The little bit is how fast the arrest and the charges came. It was within 24 hours after they found the body that they had arrested Jerry Stewart for the murder.
Burlington police had searched his apartment when she was missing, but did not turn the mattress over. The bottom of the mattress was covered in blood. Once I saw that, I knew who the person was in my mind. I backed out. Our crime scene people did the rest of the crime scene. The actual knife found up in that clothes. When we found out the green trash can had been seen being loaded into April Greer's car by Jerry Lynn Stewart Jr., we felt we were pretty much on tab with who it was. This is a statement that I took on Tuesday, April 22nd, 2003. I took this statement from Jerry Lynn Stewart Jr. It is exactly word for word what he said. Our door was barely to the living room. I saw candles lit everywhere. I walked into the kitchen. I saw blood and one of April's legs cut off laying in the floor. Off black trash bags with yellow ties were laying in the floor. Blood looked like dried ketchup was everywhere. Her bedroom and saw more candles lit, and April was laying on the bed. Her thumbs were tied by a rope to the underneath of the mattress. Her other leg was beside the rest of her body. Her foot was up next to her head. Her throat was because I was covered in blood. You know, if I'd have went in and my girlfriend had her legs chopped up and murdered, I'd have been screaming bloody murder. I'd have called the police, whatever. He didn't do any of that. He cleaned it up. Or tried to.
Hi, this is Emily, and my sister-in-law said, hey, it's me. They found a body in Back Creek. And without hesitation, the words out of my mouth were, oh my God, it's April. Basically planted myself in front of the TV.
This evening, police have detained Jerry Stewart in connection with the...
And so I'm just glued to anything that the news says. And I was just like, I just don't think I could wrap my head around all of it. Like, I just kind of rejected that idea. The next morning, I woke up and I walked out of my bedroom door. And the first thing I saw was Jerry's mugshot on the television screen. I'm sure that April's baby was the very last thing on her mind. And he could have saved her. Well, I guess he could have not done any of it. And My kids really struggle with that piece. And that's the part that they can't forgive their father for. They can't forgive him for murdering their sister. And how can I blame him? I went to Jerry's trial every day except one. The defense lawyers argued it was a fight that went too far, and at some point, Jerry snapped. Looking back, the hardest part to sit through was the medical examiners. And they said that if he had just stopped what he was doing, if he had come to his senses and called 911 and gotten help, he had 8 minutes from the time that April was dead to save that baby. And I think about that, like, I'm sure the evidence was overwhelming. I was never in a fairy tale bubble about that. But I didn't want Jerry sentenced to death. He had 2 very small children that I had no idea how to explain the death penalty to. How do I go home to my 2 kids tonight and tell...
I had heard that he had concocted her favorite dessert that night. It was a Valentine's celebration. And I never realized nobody in their right mind would do what he did to April. Hopefully, by the grace of God, she was asleep when this happened. That she didn't have to have the last moments of her life being just crazy, wide-eyed, traumatized. I just can't imagine. He almost decapitated her the way he cut her throat. And then they said that it was just about surgical the way her legs came off. And the part that nobody seems to talk about is when a woman that times the baby will come out quickly. And that baby could have been alive. Things like that should not happen to anybody under any circumstances. It's just an example of how evil can get.
I'm about to read the report from the psychiatrist that dealt with Jerry Lynn Stewart prior to his trial. He said, the more she talked, the worse it got. I could feel my heart beating inside my head. There was a knife on the dresser. I used the knife to cut the ropes. The next thing I knew, my left arm was covered in blood. There was no big spew of blood, no death struggle. I was just on my knees in front of her. I was thinking, if I can just cut these ropes, I'll leave and go away. I turned around, and the next thing I knew, she was dead. And in this situation, it was right along what I'd said earlier, to do something like this. Someone had to be very, very angry. He got what he deserved, except, he should have got the death penalty. February 13th to April 21st when we found her body. That says something about the individual that committed this crime. In my opinion, they're not much of a human being, a little sadistically off.
She showed up at O'Charlie's about 2 weeks ago, Max, and a little green Explorer. She and I had gotten in an argument. I figured she'd go away, come back in a couple of days, and she didn't. The police started looking for her.
He has no remorse whatsoever, and he's killed an animal. He knew what he was doing. And I have a hard time understanding how another human being could do that. Of course, I'm not a psychologist, and I know that, there's a lot of reasons some people go off the deep end. But that right there, in my opinion, was just plain doggone meanness. Vicious meanness. I hope every day that he sits in that cell, that now in the state prison system, that it goes on his mind what he does, and he has to live with that till the day he draws his last breath.
I think I'm grateful to have had such an involved family around me. And I guess at the end of the day, I'm really grateful I found that letter that day. I don't like to think about the "it could have been me" part, because I feel like that's disrespectful to April. It was her. I know I was lucky I got out when I did. I guess. How bad would it have gotten? When they finally made their decision and they gave him life in prison, I was relieved. Like, okay, so he's in prison for the rest of his life, but that still gives him an opportunity. I had taken the kids to visit Jerry in county jail religiously every weekend. We would wait 3 hours to see him for 15 minutes, and then we'd go home. And during that time, Jerry was very much like, I love my kids, I'm concerned about my kids. And he also found Jesus. But don't they all? My daughter said, my mama keeps telling me that they're going to get him out of jail. But I don't want him to. Because what if he comes to kill me and my mommy? And my baby is literally scared that her own father would take her life. And I didn't know how to make her feel safe. She was 5. One day, Jerry no longer wanted to see the kids, or me, that it was too painful to him when we left and to watch us go. So that was when we stopped going to visit.
Barrel, when I think about it, that sitting on the ground near the back creek, and then there's still a question in my mind: how could a human being, a living human being, do this to another human being? My wife, she'll tell you, I dream this stuff when I'm working a case. She said I woke up many times at night talking to myself, about the case as an officer to try to solve these cases. I chose this career, and I'm gonna live with whatever we have to do to make it successful. He didn't give a flip about that girl. He wouldn't have acted that way. That's a sorry human being. A cruel human being. Glad we got the killer. as a human being. Didn't deserve to die that way.
She had an email list of about 15 or 20 people that she would always update them on how the pregnancy was coming along, what she was doing, what their plan was, how they were going to decorate the baby room, even the name of the baby. They found out the baby was going to be a girl, and they came up with middle name Lee, first name Heaven. They had a memorial service to honor her and the death of her baby. It helped me overcome the feeling that she died for nothing. I mean, it gave me a sense of her worth and her value, and that her life was eternally significant. She was probably looking down and rejoicing. If you can do that from heaven, I don't know. I feel in my heart I've forgiven him, but the forgiveness doesn't free him, it frees me. And I didn't want to be in bondage to that man and what he did. That's got to be my favorite picture of her. She was so tickled that my wife had taken her to have some glamour photos done. And the expression is just the happiness of April. They captured her expression in that photograph. It reminds me of who she really was. A girl with a lot to look forward to and the potential for an awesome life and future. And I see that was taken away from her. And that we can never get her back. She won't come back to me, but I'll go to her.
A rapist. He was a child molester. He was like the worst of worst that society has. And he was a monster.
So you lose your temper once in a while and yell at her?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And have you ever lost your temper and hit her?
No.
Okay. In my mind, he killed her. And I could see several different methods of how she was killed. Investigated quite a few homicides. And I have to say, this is probably one of the most cruelest, brutal, vicious murders I've ever seen.
Now you're gonna make me cry. A smile on her face. You can see the happiness. Tell her I'm sorry. Want to be able to save her. Couldn't do it. 27 years, I haven't ever said anything to anybody about this. I've never really asked him why. You know, I mean, we're twins. How can you do something that you should have never done? And he didn't just take my life away, he took everybody's life away. Clark Elmore is my twin brother. Some people can't believe that we're that much difference. Trouble, and he kind of went to trouble. This is me in the middle, my twin on the left, my older brother on the right, on L Street in Springfield, Oregon. There were 7 of us all together. It was a full house.
in one corner, and all 5 of us slept in them beds. Had wood stove, no bathroom. We had an outhouse. We struggled, but we never thought we was poor. We always had food on the table. So, we was just kids. We enjoyed life. We never thought about the materials and stuff that you had to have to survive. Completely opposite of each other. We're not identical twins. We're fraternal. I was a lot bigger than he was, and he was a lot smaller. He stuttered a lot, so a lot of people made fun of him. He'd get angry, he'd mouth off to people, say the wrong things. Every day we'd go to school, and every day when we'd come home from school, we'd be 2, 3, 4 p.m., but they would never do nothing because I was always there to protect them. We are inseparable. We did everything together. There's times that you can feel each other and know what each other's doing or what they're going to say. Twins just seem to have that connection.
I think that's Christy's, probably her 8th grade year. She was coming out of her shell. She was finding her identity. She was making friends. She was always smiling. When the new family moved in next door, I was outside playing basketball in the driveway, and it was like this curious, ooh, here's the new people, and seeing them come out, I was definitely curious. You could definitely tell they were lower income with what they were wearing. The most apparent probably on Christy. She was wearing the vibrant colors, like the spandex shorts with, windbreakers. She had thick blonde, kind of frizzy hair. She had red framed Coke bottle glasses that made her eyes look ginormous. Christy was 1 grade below me. When she was going to the same middle school that I was, we had the same bus stop on her. Usually because of the clothes she was wearing, her glasses. And so after I got to know her a little bit better, I developed a little bit of a soft spot for her. And so I felt myself trying to help her out. I stuck up for her. I definitely did feel sorry for her. I think that Christy, a few years after she moved in, she was looking for acceptance in a crowd that was going to give her that acceptance right away. Maybe not the best of people, not doing good in school, the smokers, the kids that were a little bit more rebellious and troublemakers. The first time Christy ran away, I really wasn't concerned, but I guess I didn't realize the depth of, what was going on in the house or why she ran away. There was never a time when she and I had a conversation solely about her home life. Now I really wish I would have reached out to her or said something to her or let her know that,
That's Christy. It's kind of a sad fact that the court excluded any, what I would call, live photos of Christy. So the jurors never got to see a picture of her when she was alive. Christy Onstead was a 14-year-old girl. She attended Fairhaven Middle School. Her mother had reported her as a runaway. She was supposedly taken to school there and never returned home. At the time when it first came in, nothing jumped out that said this was anything more than just a runaway report at that time. When you first looked at it, face value, it's like, all right, maybe this was a rebellious situation. And then the mother gave me a couple photographs of Christy. I thought it was kind of normal. My daughter ran away the weekend before, and she ran away again now. And I don't know where she is. That struck me as odd that a parent would make. And that was that she said, I even asked James if he got mad and did something to her. And I said, why would you ask that? Well, because he has a temper. I'm like, okay. Now that is not a normal statement or question that one spouse or parent would ask the other parent. But when I was there, I had no evidence to be accusatory. And sometimes you have to be careful when you're in those early stages with no evidence, that you don't want to shut people down and then you have nothing. But I thought it was best to remember that statement. I think the biggest thing that went through my mind was that I'm starting to get a little bit of a fear that this is far more serious.
After high school, we just kind of parted. Clark went one way and I went the other. He went here and there. He went all over the place. He just seemed to go job to job. The people Clark hung around with was, a lot of them drank a lot, unhappy. I don't know what it was, why he was unhappy. I remember he ended up in prison in Boise. I can't remember what he did, but he done something and he got 3 or 4 or 5 years in prison. When he came out, he married a gal from California. Very nice lady. I found out that she was 3 months pregnant. And that's when I kind of stepped in and talked to her and tried to make sure that she was okay. I took care of her all the way up until baby was born. The time she was born, I was there. And sorry. And the nurse wanted me to ask me if nurse asked me if Dad wanted to hold the kid, and I said, well, I'm not the dad. Well, Dad gonna come? I said, no, Dad's not here right now. And that's all I said. So, from there on, even though I was an uncle, that was my child. He should have been there, but when she was about 8 months old, Clark and his ex-wife was divorced, and we ended up falling in love, and ended up having 2 other kids after that. Clark and I never talked about that at all. I might have mentioned to him, said, hey, as far as she knows, you had nothing to do with it. He did something wrong, and I was making sure that it turned around and it was made right.
I located school and I talked to each one of these kids, and none of them had seen her. There was one girl that was pretty close with Christy, and she had told me that Christy never really disclosed anything to her, but would almost. She would say there was something that either happened or was going on at home, but she never really disclosed to her what it was. But this girl, I remember her being pretty emotional about it and said, if I knew, I would tell you, but I don't. When I left there, I was more concerned that this was more than just a rebellious girl that ran away from home that will either turn up or will locate her. got a copy of a report from a patrol officer indicated that a backpack was found in a ditch about a mile from their house or so, give or take. And it ended up being Christy Onset's pack, which had some of her clothing and such in it. I have not had runaway cases come up where it was just out of ordinary. And that really started to trigger things looking in a more serious direction. James Dickey decided to get a hold of people he knew in the neighborhood and such and organize his own search. It wasn't walking around knocking on doors asking where she was. It was people walking in the backyards looking under stuff. That's what you do if you're looking for a body recovery, not that you're looking for a live person. And why would you do that? That just seemed really, really now way off the normal track. And when I talked to the deputies, their impression given to me was that he was suggesting or wanted to steer the searchers in a particular direction. You need to go east. You need to look this way. No, don't look any other way. It in your head. And while they continued their search, we thought we need to talk to him again. And I asked James Dickey, I told him, I said, I'd like to talk to you again. Is that okay? Sure. What sort of problems have been happening at home? Has there been any sort of arguments or more rebellion lately than before that's been going on?
You know, man, it's got real bad, and we were trying to diffuse, man, the situation.
Uh-huh. Can you describe what the changes were that were going on?
Attitude, you know, it's like you ask her to do the dishes.
Uh-huh.
She acts like you beat her. Man, you abused her. Man, I have a tendency
to yell at her?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And have you ever lost your temper and hit her?
No.
Okay. And then we got into, well, you took her to school, and I believe that's when you kind of wanted to clarify, well, and I didn't actually drop her off at school.
And I dropped her off at the light down there because there was a bunch of kids out there, and that's where she wanted off. And then I turned around and went about my business.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we came to a point shortly after that comment, him trying to clarify that. Never forget this. I looked at him and I said, okay, with all this going on, where do you think she is?
I haven't got a clue, but honestly, I don't think she's kicking. I don't, you know.
Meaning that she's probably dead?
Yeah.
I looked at him and I said, because she's got a big mouth. Now, in my mind, there's no doubt. All that's telling me that he just told me she's dead. And how does he know that she's dead? Because he killed her. That's the conclusion I came right at that point in time. Was that you know she's dead because you did it. I didn't have any evidence or probable cause at that point. I just had this gut feeling I wasn't person anymore. Now we were in a homicide.
That's the creepy van. Even before everything happened, my friends and people that I knew that knew Christy, my house was the house next to the molester van. I remember coming home from school, from the bus stop, walking home and walking past their house, and he was hosing out the back. And I definitely didn't think anything of it at first, but I thought to myself, I remember James always talking about how just change the oil every once in a while, and it's maintenance free, and you don't have to worry about doing anything to it or even washing it. So why is he cleaning his van? My curiosity was through the roof. Like, what is going on? And that's definitely when I became more involved. They had started a search party near where the backpack was found, up by Lake Patton. Me and my dad had left the search party, after it had been going on all day, and went back up at one point. And when we came back up, law enforcement was looking at James and talking to him, and just the look on his face he was just white, and he had something for him to sign. And I remember seeing him, and he could barely hold onto the pen. He was shaking so much when he was signing the release. And me and my dad kind of looked at each other like, he has something to hide. Did he take her somewhere? Is she locked up somewhere? Like, what did he do?
I, in my mind, had no doubt this was a murder, but I didn't have any evidence. I'm thinking now, if he drives that van all the time, I need to look in that van. I need to see if there's any sort of evidence. Have you looked through your van to see if maybe when you were taking the school, she might have dropped a note or something on the floor or something?
No.
We're about done here. She dropped something?
Sure.
I said, okay, so when we get back, I'm going to fill out a consent to search form, and I'll spell out what I'm looking for. The whole demeanor with James Dickey changed. And it was pale, shaky. Now it was kind of meek, withheld, and just kind of going along with what was asked. I wonder why a lot of times he'd let me search. I think he didn't think there was anything in there that I would see. And so I went to look in there. I borrowed a flashlight from one of the deputies. I guess I was looking for something that I could put her in that van, for sure. And I was thinking at that point in time, if she's happened in that vehicle, and that's why I needed to look in it. And at that particular moment, I didn't see anything. And it kind of left us in the position where we had to let him go for the night. I didn't have enough evidence I could do anything, so I had to let him go. It's kind of a terrifying thing. You have someone that they committed a murder. You don't know what he's going to do. If he's capable of killing one, I mean, it's a guess. Will he just run away? Will he do it again? It's hard to say. So I think my biggest fear was, number one concern is I can't lose this guy. He's a danger, and I'm more afraid that I have nothing. He's going to take off. I ended up going home, but it was one of those nights where you're thinking about it. At one point in time in the morning, I tried calling there. Ended up talking to mother, who said that he wasn't home, that he went and ran some errands, should be back shortly. That was a concern. So a little bit of time went by, I don't recall exactly how long. And there was a concern that he took off. We went back to the house, talked to the mother, and there were questions asked about, well, where would he have gone to? And the mother is like, well, I thought he went to run errands. He should be back. I don't know. During this, there was a search through the house. And I believe it was during this time where we ended up finding, it was like a box container that had several different state identifications. They all had James Dickey's picture on them, but there was different names. Now I have a big concern.
Now you're gonna make me cry. I remember this way. When she came around, one of the only times I've seen her, she always had that smile on her face. The only thing I do is look up and say, I'm sorry. I wish I could have done something. And I had hit it off. I mean, right off the bat. Big time. And Clark seemed happy. Yeah, I thought, well, he's just going to raise her like his own. But he just seemed like he was, doing what a father should be doing. But he told me I should call him James. That's why I won't call him James. He said, who the hell is James Lee Dickey? And he goes, well, that's me. I didn't think about it then. I just figured, boy, he's done 180 turnaround. Here he's finally straightened out his life. Seemed happier than what he normally was. At least I thought it was. Upstairs horsing around and playing, and we were all upstairs just talking and doing whatever we were doing. Well, at the time he kept going downstairs. I just thought it was kind of odd. But Clark just kept going down there. To me, it just didn't make any sense. Together, they don't want an adult down there bugging them. I don't know why he was doing that. Maybe he wanted to make sure she was behaving, or, maybe he was a little bit stricter than I was. But he would go down there and check, and then he'd come back upstairs, and then he'd go back down there and check again, and then come back upstairs, and out of the blue, Mom called and said, have you seen your brother? Christy's missing. That gut feeling again. As soon as she said that, I just automatically knew. It kind of clicked. That's why he's going downstairs. He had an on her, make sure that she wasn't saying nothing. He was worried about her opening her mouth. And that's automatically when I knew. And I said he killed her. I told Mom, I said, he killed her. And I said, he did. So I just know. I feel it. And that's when I called the police up there, and I said, you're looking for the wrong one. He says, his name's Clark Rich Elmore. And they said, how do you know? And I said, oh.
It was starting to get later in the evening, and then I got a page from the sheriff sergeant who was up at the scene. So I telephoned him, and he told me that his search crew had found a body. And at that point in time, I asked Jansen they found. There was no doubt in my mind.
Searchers at approximately 8 o'clock last night found the body of a nude young female in the wooded area in this general area. That scene is being processed at this time.
James Dickey wanted everyone to look towards Bellingham. This was 8.5 miles away, and pretty much the sergeant and I were led through the brush to where the body was located. She had plastic wrapped over the upper part of her. She had a shirt on, half pulled off. She was nude from the waist down. We moved the plastic off her head, and I immediately identified her. That's Christy Onstead. And it was, no doubt it was her. I could see several different methods of how she was killed. Well, I can visualize it. I see her face. Yeah, just like it was yesterday. It was just about as cold-hearted as you could do. She was manually strangled. There was like a needle object sticking out of her ear that later was a long needle that he shoved through her head and through her brain. And then she was bludgeoned all about the head. Over my years in career, I've investigated quite a few homicides, and I have to say, this was probably one of the most cruelest I've ever seen. I knew James Dickey did it. I had no doubt in my mind. After a matter of hours, she's nowhere to be found. I'm thinking he probably figured out that we found her and he took off. I put a bolo out on him. The other difficult thing is now, Gunter, that makes it even worse. If it was just that, okay, I know he's James Dickey and that's it, you look for that name, but now you got James Dickey, Clark Elmore, I think there was another one, Mark Stevens or something, but there was several different names. And it's like, okay, that just complicates it. It's like, okay, you got somebody that's close and all of a sudden, boom, they're gone. And you don't know where they went. Yeah, that's awful.
It was late at night, and I remember they had already found Christy's body and already let Christy's mom know. Even though we had our suspicions about James and everything else, it was still so horrific that, it's hard to believe. She was brutally raped and murdered and thrown in the woods and hugging my parents, and all the while knowing exactly what he did. It was almost surreal. You don't know what he's capable of and who he's going to take it out on. Supposedly he loved Christy. What's going to put it past him to, take out his neighbors or supposed friends?
He's a murderer and he's gone in the wind. I don't know where he is. And are we going to be able to find him? I mean, that's a giant concern. And I have no idea. You can go anywhere in the world. That was not a good moment.
Yes, I'm standing out here in front of the Bellingham Police Department. I sent somebody over to lock me up.
What's the problem?
Murdered.
Who'd you kill?
Christy Onstead.
And what's your name?
James Dickey.
He said he wanted to come in and turn him. The officer and the lieutenant, they advised him of his rights and put him in an interview room and just watched him till I got there. I wanted his confession. Obviously, that was hugely important. He decides that he's going to kill her. He takes the belt off of her pants and puts it around her neck and uses that as a ligature. So out of his toolbox, he removes this big needle. He decides to put that in her left ear and then ram it through her head. And he says that she's still moving and making some garbage bag and put over her head. Christy was bludgeoned to death. Basically, he took a sledgehammer out of his toolbox and then he used that to strike her on the head until she was dead. He made the admission that he had molested her in the past and that would try and discipline her. She would make the threat to him that she would disclose on him. And that morning, I believe the threat of disclosure came up again. But instead of taking her to school, he had decided he was going to drive her down to where she was actually found. When she got in the van, she was not going to survive the trip. I wondered, did she know that? At some point, I would think that realization came in. To me, that adds to the cold, cruel, viciousness of this whole crime, is that at the point that she knew that she wasn't coming home. A sociopath, he has absolutely no empathy for anyone but himself. This whole story is just a tragic thing where everybody lost in this situation. This girl was unfairly victimized and cheated out of life, and all her family was destroyed because of it.
I was definitely relieved that he had been arrested and that he was in jail. It felt like safe, not just for me and my family, but for Christy's family too. At some point after Christy had been found and James had turned himself in, James, there for Christy's mom. And that's when I learned about his full alias, like that he had a different last name. James's brother didn't seem anything like him. He seemed normal compared to James. Once did a lot of reflecting, and I still do sometimes when I think about it. But for a while I thought she was just trying to fit in and be cool. And afterwards I was like, how many times was she outside avoiding being molested or being beat or whatever was going on in that house? She literally lived a sheltered life inside that home, probably in fear every day of whether she was... My relationship with Christy definitely shaped me as a person, not just a parent, to not take people at face value and understand that there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes sometimes, and we don't know about it.
In 27 years, I've seen him 4 times. I've never asked him why or anything else. How did he kind of stay away from the subject? I didn't know he was capable of it. I don't know how he could have been capable of doing something like that. I don't know how anybody was capable of doing what he did. I feel that I failed. I think I failed myself. I didn't know. If I would have known, then things would have been different. But I didn't know. I tried to correct everything and try to make everything right. But this is one thing I couldn't make right. I can't. Sometimes that's what bothers me. That I can't make, excuse me, can't make this one right. I just miss being with him, and that, like I say, he took a lot away from me. In 27 years, I haven't really said anything to anybody about this. I keep it in. It's hard for me to talk about it. His own twin brother did this, and it doesn't give me closure because I'll never have a closure. But it may help other people realize that, hey, maybe we need to talk to our kids. And if that helps, and I say one kid.
Mara read until the house spun like a top. Her hands trembled as if holding flame. She had loved her mother and had also come to her with the impatient hunger of a child. She had assumed thriftiness, and economy of kindness. She had not thought her mother could be ledger keeper to a different sort of market. The next morning, Mara went to the feed store. Greg, who had a face like a well-weathered bench, listened to her without surprise. "Everyone's been trading in their reasons for years," he said, pouring her coffee as if the town's crooked ledger was as ordinary as rain. "You pay somebody a favor, and you keep their secret. Nobody asks where the favors came from. You just keep them. Why would my mother?" Mara hesitated. She could not say aloud the shape the ledger suggested. "To survive," Greg said. He wiped his hands on his apron. "Different ways. Lines of work that keep a family fed. You didn't see it. Most of us don't. We think we live in one story and not another." The projectionist continued to show films. People lined up, some to see their childhoods, others to confess in images they couldn't otherwise face. The caravan grew a reputation like mold, subtle and inevitable. A woman who'd watched her husband's confession of infidelity threw herself from the wooden platform outside the caravan and walked away without a face. A young man who watched a scene of himself stealing from his boss stopped coming to the factory. Mara found herself drawn back, against her better judgment, to the caravan on a rainy Thursday. She sat in the same seat. The projectionist smiled like a man greeting a coin that had returned to his palm. "You came back," he said. "You showed my mother," she said, unable to keep the accusation from her voice. "I show what is given." He threaded the next reel with a hand that trembled but did not falter. "Sometimes people bring me their own recordings. Sometimes I find them where the world misplaces them. What do you do with what you take?" He paused. The hum of the projector was a small animal in the room. "I make them legible," he said. "I make them shareable. People need to see their lives as a piece of film sometimes. It helps them understand the cuts." Mara thought of blades and hands and of her mother stitching. She thought of the ledger and the crates. The caravan felt like a tribunal that did not call witnesses, but instead exposed evidence like fruit on a table. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally, because the question had turned the corner in her chest and could not be kept in any longer. "Names," he said simply, "and a memory. One for the film. One you will not mind seeing again." She found herself answering before she could stop herself. "What if I don't want to give names?" The projectionist's smile thinned. "Then you will keep them, or they will keep you." The night's film began with Mara as a child at Gainmity knees. The sound of a train passing and unrolled into a sequence she had never imagined. A series of late-night meetings by the river, the exchange of packages, the turning of hands like salaries. Faces were clearer now. One of the men who received a crate in the film was not a stranger, but the familiar jawline of the town's mayor. Another face belonged to a woman who ran the dry cleaners. The ledger's list scrolled like a ticker, names and sums, favors and dates. The film showed how favors looped into debts and debts looped into secrecy, and how small towns maintain themselves on an economy of hidden accounts. Mara watched herself haggard and angry, confronting her brother, finger pointed like a question. "What did she do?" she yelled in the film. The room in the reel answered with the coolness of a machine. Tom said nothing, only looked away, and Mara watched the weight of his silence and like a hand on her shoulder. When the film stopped, the projectionist closed the projector with a sigh as if tucking in a child. The caravan's light came up slowly. People emerged in twos and threes, some relieved, some raw. Mara sat frozen. She had paid with the memory of a backyard meeting and the ledger's rusted list, but payment there had been no balance. The projectionist had shown her the world as a system and not an anthology of saints. In his films, everyone was both sinner and accountant. She left the caravan with a ledger in her mind and a nausea that did not leave. The town continued its life, indifferent as a river. People went to work, closed shop, kissed in secret. But now Mara felt each movement as if it had an accounting tick. She watched men she used to think ordinary fold their hands like those who keep dangerous books. Then, one night a week later, Mara received an envelope thrust under her door. The paper was cheap and mottled. Inside was a single photograph smudged at the edge and a note in her mother's angular hand. "You were always meant to see. Keep what you must." Beneath the note was another ledger entry. Her mother's script spelled out a name Mara had not expected. Tom Rorkian beside the name a sum, but not currency, return. Her hands shook so hard she could not hold the paper flat. The notations threaded like veins. She went back to the caravan. though every rational part of her wanted to bury the photograph in the ground. The projectionist met her at the door, and this time he did not ask for a memory. He offered her something more dangerous, a trade. "You can watch and understand what the town kept," he said, "or you can become the one who keeps it here, so others won't have to. It is a mercy to hold burdens for others." Mara's head spun in the caravan's low light. The offer shone like a coin in the sun, brilliant and molten. To hold a town's secrets so it might preserve its face of civility. The idea had the shape of heroism, but heroism, she knew now, was often ledgered in silence. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you are willing to see," he said softly. "Because you come back. Because you have been given a ledger and you can read it." The proposition unrolled like a map of a place she had just left. To accept would be to inherit her mother's booked inventory, the favors, the balances. To become the town's private accountant of sins and kindnesses. To refuse would be to continue living under their weight, watching them like a person watches a wall for cracks. Mara thought of Tom and his silence. She thought of her mother's knitting hands and ledger entries. She thought of the photograph pushed under her door. The caravan's hum felt like a heartbeat in her ears. She took a breath and nodded once. The projectionist smiled, not cruelly, but as one who had predicted the weather. He opened a drawer and took out a small black book, its cover plain, the pages blank as new snow. "Write what you take," he said, "and write what you give. The ledger will learn your hand. The film will remember." She signed with a pen that bled ink like a confession. The caravan's door closed behind her, muffling the town to a distant sound. The projectionist fed the projector one more reel, but this time there were no images for the public to see. Instead, he showed Mara what keeping looked like, a room of shelves, each labeled with names and dates, a narrow window where footage could be reviewed, a leather-bound book where favors were recorded as if they were seeds to be planted. "You will have to decide what to keep and what to return," he said. "It is heavy work. People expect you to be kind, but kindness is a tax. Sometimes you will be asked to conceal an act of mercy. Sometimes you will be asked to return something that corrodes the soul. You will be lonely. You will be necessary." Mara thought of her mother's hands, and for the first time she understood the ledger not as a ledger, but as a language of survival. She thought of the way small towns traded in quiet complicities to keep themselves standing. She thought of Tom's silence, which suddenly felt like a ledger entry of its own, unpaid, unfinished, a debt that had a shape. She left the caravan with the black book in her handbag. The projectionist packed up the caravan the next morning without fanfare, the truck humming like an engine settling into sleep. He left a card in the slot of his service window. The projectionist. "Keep what you must." Years passed like film rolling between steady hands. Mara settled into the role the caravan had offered, and in time it became her life. She learned to read people's faces like pages of a ledger, and to sort favors into columns, labeled kindness and cost. She would receive envelopes slid under doors, photographs, small objects, each one a seed to be catalogued. Sometimes she returned what she could. Sometimes she kept it tucked in drawers, like secret bulbs that might bloom into storms. She learned that mercy could be a burden, and that secrecy could be a protection. And she learned, in a trade she had not asked for, how to keep a town moving without breaking it. But secrets have weight. They rust in the ribs and corrode the joints. The black book grew thicker. Her hands, once quick to tie up strings and mend hems, found themselves knotted. There were nights she woke with her heart an echoing hollow, as if the caravan's projector still turned in the dark, and the reel had a voice that would not hush. One winter a child came to her door with cheeks like apples and a tear in his laugh. He had found an old photograph, a scrap of a moment, and he wanted to know if it could be returned. Mara read the ledger, weighed the cost, and decided to return the photograph carefully. She walked to the child's house and handed it over. The child's face bloomed like a dawn. For a week Mara felt a warmth she had not known since her mother's hands smoothed the hem of a shirt. But then a paper appeared slid under her door, a note thanking her for her mercy, and reminding her that every act of return left a ledger entry elsewhere. It is a peculiar thing to be a town's memory keeper. People will love you for mending what you can, and hate you for what you cannot. They will bring you their guilt and their gratitude, their photographs and their confessions. You will hold them in your hands like fragile things. In exchange, you will be lonely in a way that carves hollows where laughter once lived. It is a duty with no public parade, an invisible office that asks you to be both saint and censor. Years folded into years. Mara learned to live with the caravan's absence as she had learned to live with the ledger's weight. She married once and not to anyone pivotal, a man who liked books and could boil eggs properly. They had a child. Tom visited sometimes, his mouth softening in a way that suggested a man who had carried a debt until it cooled into something he could set down. The town hummed on, secrets layered like dust. When Mara grew older, her hands began to tremble as if from the motion of too much accounting. One evening, when the sunset hit the river like a coin, she sat at her kitchen table and opened the black book. Her handwriting had changed with time, more careful, with capitals like small bridges. She wrote the names of the last things she had agreed to keep, a photograph, a ledger, a child's note. At the bottom of the page she paused and then wrote her mother's name, underlining it twice. She realized then the infinite smallness of the caravan's bargain. The projectionist did not want to ruin the world so much as to teach people how to recognize that they were part of one. He had not asked to be worshipped. He asked only that someone make order of what the town could not keep in its head. The lesson had been brutal and private. To remember is to be entrusted, and to be entrusted is to be altered. When Mara finally could no longer bear the ledger's weight alone, she took the black book down to the river. The current caught the sunlight like a blade. She wrote one last note in the margin, brief as a breath, keep what you must. Then she folded the book and placed it in a small wooden box, sealing it as one seals a letter. She walked to the place where the caravan had once parked, and left the box buried beneath the cracked asphalt, its lid meeting the soil like a promise. She did not see the projectionist again. Sometimes she wondered whether he had been an ordinary man with a caravan, or an arrangement of the town's needs given shape. But the caravan's lesson remained: memory, when traded and tended, can hold a community together. But it was also a weight that could break the keeper. On her last night, as the moon wound itself thin and the town breathed in sleep, Mara sat by the window and watched the willows' reflection in the slow river. She thought of film-off frames that show light and shadow, of reels that turn until they fray. She thought of the ledger and the black book, and how each town must find a way to contain its ghosts. In the morning her son would find a note and know what to do, or he would not. The town would go on. People would still call each other in the evenings and keep each other's secrets, in exchange for small kindnesses. She died with a photograph tucked in her hand, a picture of her mother and a younger Mara, both laughing on a platform as a train arrived. The moment caught in a light that made everything seem possible. The black book remained buried. The caravan never returned. But sometimes, in the sound of a projector's hum on late nights, when films were shown at the school hall, someone would swear they could hear the soft boot of a man walking down an aisle, the faint rattle of film, and a paper voice that said, keep what you must. And so the town kept its lights on and its ledgers closed in drawers, and people went on making economies of favors and keeping the fragile architecture of civility intact. They loved their dead in public and hid their debts in private. The projectionist had taught the Meef a lesson can be taught without protest, that memory is both currency and cure, that preservation demands cost, and that some people will always be asked to carry what the rest of us cannot. Mara read until the house spun like a top. Her hands trembled as if holding flame. She had loved her mother and had also come to her with the impatient hunger of a child. She had assumed thrift, thriftiness, and economy of kindness. She had not thought her mother could be ledger keeper to a different sort of market. The next morning Mara went to the feed store. Greg, who had a face like a well-weathered bench, listened to her without surprise. Everyone's been trading in their reasons for years, he said, pouring her coffee as if the town's crooked ledger was as ordinary as rain. You pay somebody a favor, and you keep their secret. Nobody asks where the favors came from. You just keep them. Why would my mother? Mara hesitated. She could not say aloud the shape the ledger suggested. To survive, Greg said. He wiped his hands on his apron. Different ways. Lines of work that keep a family fed. You didn't see it. Most of us don't. We think we live in one story and not another. The projectionist continued to show films. People lined up, some to see their childhoods, others to confess in images they couldn't otherwise face. The caravan grew a reputation like mold, subtle and inevitable. A woman who'd watched her husband's confession of infidelity threw herself from the wooden platform outside the caravan and walked away without a face. A young man who watched a scene of himself stealing from his boss stopped coming to the factory. Mara found herself drawn back, against her better judgment, to the caravan on a rainy Thursday. She sat in the same seat. The projectionist smiled like a man greeting a coin that had returned to his palm. "You came back," he said. "You showed my mother," she said, unable to keep the accusation from her voice. "I show what is given." He threaded the next reel with a hand that trembled but did not falter. "Sometimes people bring me their own recordings. Sometimes I find them where the world misplaces them. What do you do with what you take?" He paused. The hum of the projector was a small animal in the room. "I make them legible," he said. "I make them shareable. People need to see their lives as a piece of film sometimes. It helps them understand the cuts." Mara thought of blades and hands and of her mother stitching. She thought of the ledger and the crates. The caravan felt like a tribunal that did not call witnesses, but instead exposed evidence like fruit on a table. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally, because the question had turned the corner in her chest and could not be kept in any longer. "Names," he said simply, "and a memory. One for the film, one you will not mind seeing again."